everyone, this is People in Power, and I'm Summer El-Shahat. On today's program, cruel and quite usual.
Kolunu ber dedi, kolunu tartıp aldı de, anaqam katta inan barmağımı çıkıp aldı. Hech narsa aytmaysanmi dedi ki, yana baqirib rosa doğurdi de, yoqamni ushlab itarib devorlarga tegizib.
The former Soviet state of Uzbekistan has become an important ally for both the United States and NATO. Its border with Afghanistan providing an invaluable supply route for the West's war on the Taliban. But its government, led by President Islam Karimov, has a dreadful human rights record. It's a country where political and religious expression is heavily restricted, and where security services allegedly use torture and murder indiscriminately. Thousands of Uzbeks have fled abroad, a few to Europe or the United States, the majority to neighbouring countries in Central Asia. Mostly practicing Muslims, they seek sanctuary from the violence and a chance to live in peace. Instead, as Simon Ostrovsky reports, many of them face arrest and deportation back to a country where brutal repression is an everyday occurrence.
I had beaten up by police in Uzbekistan, and after that I had operation. They removed my cheekbone. They started beating. I was on the chair with handcuff, and they start torturing, just torturing.
Abdullah Kadyrov now lives in London, but in his homeland Uzbekistan, he was targeted by the authorities on suspicion of being a Muslim extremist.
They want to get information from me, which I don't know. Very well known, those people in the mosque. You do this, you do that. Or you're just planning and plotting at home. It's just beaten up so brutally, and I lost consciousness after that. I don't know. Then I seek asylum here, and many people helped, advised me. Then I'm here.
Uzbekistan. It's Central Asia's most populous country, and according to Human Rights Watch, one of the most repressive states to have emerged from the breakup of the Soviet Union. Its leader, Islam Karimov, has been seen in the West as an ally in the war on terror since he granted NATO the use of an airbase near Afghanistan. But over the last decade, Karimov has used a series of bomb attacks blamed on Islamic radicals to crack down on practicing Muslims. He sees them as a threat to his secular regime, and while thousands have been arrested, many too have been tortured and killed. Abdullah Kadyrov is one of the lucky few who've been able to flee repression to a Western country. But many more get only as far as Uzbekistan's immediate neighbors, former Soviet countries with questionable human rights records of their own. Russia, Ukraine, Kazakhstan and Kyrgyzstan have forcibly expelled scores of Uzbek asylum seekers back to their homeland, where rights groups say they face torture and lengthy prison sentences. Last year, Kazakhstan arrested over 30 Uzbek Muslims. 4 have already been sent back. 29 remain in detention. I traveled to the Kazakh city where they're being held to find out who they were and what was in store for them. Almaty. It's Central Asia's most prosperous city and a destination for migrants from across the region. Nearly 1,500 kilometers from Uzbekistan's capital, it's also a place Muslim refugees have tried to make their home. This woman is the wife of one of the 29 men imprisoned here. He's wanted on charges of extremism in Uzbekistan, where he and the others are likely to be tortured if sent back. She shares the house with the wives of some of the other detainees and their children. They all say their families are targets of Uzbekistan's secular regime because of their Islamic appearance and strict religious observance. What was the reason that you had to leave Uzbekistan? I mean, what happened over there that you had to claim refugee status in another country?
Tashlab chiqishimiz sababi o'ta ko'p tazyiqlar bo'lib, ro'molimizni o'ratmasdan namozlarga borgizmay qo'ydilar-da, namoz o'qitmayaptilar-da ular.
Gulnora Kadirova told me that in 2009, police swooped down on her home in Uzbekistan and took her to be questioned, along with her husband, daughter, and son-in-law.
Keyin rasm ko'rsatishdi, mana uni ichida kimni taniysan dedi. Keyin men kuyovimni taniyman dedim-da. Keyin aytdiki, senlarda dedi, qo'llaring bor. Keyin men aytdim, Alloh haqqi dedim. Hech qanaqa unaqa narsalarni eshitmaganman ham, xo'jayinim ham, kuyovim ham. Keyin qo'lingni ber dedi-da, qo'limni tortib oldi-da, anaqa katta iynani barmog'imni ichiga tiqib oldi. Hech narsa aytmaysanmi dedi. Keyin yana baqirib rosa do'g'irdi-da, yoqamni ushlab itarib, devorlarga tegizib.
She said the brutal interrogation went on for 2 days, and at the end of it, her son-in-law was dead, her pregnant daughter had sustained a miscarriage, and her husband was badly injured from a harsh beating. In Kazakhstan, things seemed at first to be different, but since the arrest of the 29 men, the police have never been far off. Some police have just arrived at the house where Gulnora Kadirova lives, and they're asking for documents and paperwork for the Uzbek refugees that are living here. Satisfied with the paperwork, they departed. Prison conditions are notoriously severe across the former Soviet Union, and Kazakhstan is no exception. Kadirova removed packaging from food for her husband in accordance with prison regulations. We headed to the pretrial detention center where he's being held in the city of Almaty. But a few minutes after entering the visitors area of the prison, I found out how the authorities in Kazakhstan deal with unwelcome guests. Security guards detained me, demanding that I give up the tape I had been shooting. When I refused, they locked the Uzbek women in the prison and told me they wouldn't be released until I gave up the tape. Guards at Almaty's pretrial detention center number 1 had briefly taken 2 innocent women hostage in order to prevent a journalist from filming. The prison warden had called me in for questioning about my activities. I wanted the warden to let me interview Kadirova's husband and the other detainees.
Если вы можете нам что-то сказать, вы можете это сказать публично.
Не надо снимать. Я вам еще раз скажу.
Нет, ему положено. Это у них?
Не надо, я вам сказал. У нас не положено.
Нельзя.
Это режимный объект, здесь запись запрещена. Еще раз. Сейчас видеокассету изымем.
No one can blame Kazakhstan for being concerned about the presence of people Uzbekistan claims are Islamic radicals. But the authorities' methods of dealing with this large group of asylum seekers who haven't been convicted of any crime has raised questions among human rights activists.
Unless proper proof is provided that these people have indeed committed these crimes, until that time they are innocent. And they are asylum seekers and they should not be in detention.
Somewhere outside Central Asia, I met a man who told me he was part of a cover-up operation carried out by the Uzbek security services. He told me he was arrested, tortured, and then forced to work in a morgue in the Uzbek city of Andijan.
Руки вставляют такой на стол, да, и вот как вот так бьют с этими дубинками.
A security agent gave him little choice in the matter.
Он на меня посмотрел и сказал: у тебя нет выбора. Или ты подпишешь, или же пойдешь назад в обезьянник.
After protests in Andijan were brutally suppressed by Uzbek soldiers in 2005, hundreds of people across the region were arrested on suspicion of taking part in the uprising. The bodies of those who didn't survive their detention were sent to the morgue for a secret cleanup operation.
Сквозное ранение груди, да, берется разрез разных сторон, например, плюсом или же идет как звездочка. И это зашивается очень мелко и красиво. Это показывает на то, что делалось скрытие, но она мало кому покажется, что там было сквозное ранение. Пулевое ранение, ножевое ранение. У нас был такой приказ, что мы должны ее сделать так, чтобы оно не было видно, что такое-такое.
So you're saying that your job was to cover up the bullet and knife wounds so that nobody could tell that they had ever been made?
Если простой человек, который никогда не видел такие вещи, он не может этого догадаться.
So in the 6 months that you were working there, how many torture victims' bodies did you examine?
Приблизительно только на моей смене прошло примерно 500, я могу сказать.
Nadezhda Atayeva is an Uzbek dissident who documents abuses in her homeland from exile in France.
То есть это его свидетельство?
Это его свидетельство о смерти, где написано, что здесь вот у него случился миокард, да, инфаркт миокарда. И когда мы стали вот смотреть эти фотографии, то видно, что очень характерные ноги, да, вот стопы ног. Обычно это все происходит, так искривляются ноги, видите, как вывернуты, да, стопа. Это когда систематически бьют человека по пяткам.
She helped the former morgue worker escape Uzbekistan through her human rights organization.
История и рассказ этого доктора, он раскрывает некоторые тайны. Когда мы услышали рассказ человека, который описывает тайную лабораторию, в которой, в принципе, зачищаются следы пыток и фабрикуются причины смерти людей, мне кажется, это обстоятельство очень важно донести до общественности и придать этому огласку.
This hidden camera footage smuggled out of Uzbekistan shows the Andijan hospital where the cover-up took place. There was another voice willing to speak out about the lengths Uzbekistan's security services would go to conceal torture and the real reasons for deaths in custody. And it came from an unexpected source, one of their own former rank.
Have you ever taken part in torturing evidence out of somebody?
I don't want to answer for your question.
Ikrom Yakubov is the only National Security Services officer to have ever broken the silence of Uzbekistan's secret police. He defected to the United Kingdom in 2007.
The person de facto who was killed by torture, they wrote he was ill, he was sick. They've got a special department. That department brings the body who was killed by torture, usually early morning, to their relative's house. And they demand from them to bury them immediately.
Люди, которые были при жизни истерзаны, запытаны, доведены до смерти, мы не можем даже знать их имен. На них висит брелок с номером. Я считаю, что это шокирует, должно шокировать общественность, и нужно призвать правительство Узбекистана к ответу.
Back in Kazakhstan, the wives of the 29 Uzbek asylum seekers were fighting to have the Kazakh courts overturn a decision not to grant them refugee status, arguing that in Uzbekistan they wouldn't get a fair trial and could face abuse.
Ваша честь, я вас прошу. Справедливо наше дело. Смотрите, у меня муж никакой террорист. Тем более ответчица никакой не предъявила факты. Пусть она мне покажет, где-то мой муж где-то участвовал, пусть вот покажет на диске или, я не знаю, фотография, пусть они нам покажут.
Kazakhstan is bound by international law not to send the detainees to torture, but the courts seem to have a different agenda. I went to see a woman whose appeal had recently been refused. Once again, police were at the door, but pulled away when they saw a camera. Shakhlo Jalolova is also the wife of one of the 29 men being held. She told me about her mistreatment in Uzbekistan, something she had also tried to describe to a Kazakh judge.
Un kiygan vaqti nafas ololmaydi odam, boshda juda siqadi. Nafas olish qiyin edi, o'shanga meni qo'l qo'yishga majburlagan. Erim jihodchi degan ma'noga xat yozilgan, men qo'ymayman. Bir 3 minutlar chamasi ushladi, o'shanga ham yuragi siqib, ko'karib qolish darajasiga bordi. Ha, meni o'zimni ham o'sha paytda beramin edim.
The judge at her hearing wasn't interested in those details, as you can hear from this recording made by Radio Liberty.
Bu sud meni o'zimni tushunishim bo'yicha haqiqiy sud bo'lmadi, chunki oldindan sud bo'lib, buni atkasini belgilab qo'yganga o'xshab 15 minutga atkas javobini berdi. Bizda haqqimiz yo'qmi bir insonlarda yashashga, bolalar bir otasi bilan yashashga? Nima aybimiz uchun biz ham bunday xonalarda yashashimiz kerak?
But if there were any doubts each individual case wasn't getting its fair hearing, they were surely dispelled by another judge. In this recording, he can be heard ruling to uphold a decision not to grant asylum to one of the 29 detainees. The only problem was he was ruling on a case that had yet to be heard.
Холбой 73-го года рождения, гражданин Узбекистана обратился. Вы извиняюсь.
Uzbekistan is a country where torture is systematic, and the government of Kazakhstan has an international obligation not to forcibly return any individual, regardless of his status, to a country where there is a risk of torture.
There are up to 10,000 observant Muslims accused of extremism imprisoned in Uzbekistan for little more than practicing their faith. Human rights groups say accessing the country's prison system is near impossible. So I came to the border to meet 2 women who have jailed relatives in Uzbekistan. They told me dozens of people in their villages had been arrested, tortured until they confessed, and given long sentences. They covered their faces because speaking to a foreign journalist could get them arrested too.
Наши люди действительно очень боятся. Я говорю, что еще осталось? Детей забирают, отцы посаживают, матери посаживают. Например, в нашей улице человек 10-15 в тюрьме сидят.
O'zimizdan O'zbekiston yordam beramiz, o'sha chet davlatlar yordam bersin bizga. Например, наш махалле 18-20 человек сидят. Beayb, gunohi yo'q.
But why had the leader of a Muslim country come down so hard on practitioners of the faith?
Islam Karimov as a dictator ruling the country almost 22 years. And in that country, in Uzbekistan, exists only his will.
Наша цель остается прежней. Мы ее не меняем. Строительство открытого демократического государства.
To rule the country for such a long time, and he understood that terrorize their own people is the most suitable way for him. As an intelligence officer, your target will be the people who is regularly going to mosques. I know a lot of intelligence officers, even me, use it to drink a lot of alcohol. Why? Because you have got an order and you have to find the terrorists and extremists. So, to be a brave, to fabricate a case for innocent people, what do? You will go have an alcohol, and under the influence of that alcohol, you can fabricate any case.
Central to any fabricated case is the confession, and the Uzbek security services have many means at their disposal to obtain one, but mainly
beating is a common torture method in Uzbekistan.
Привозили трупы мужчин, которые были, скажем, изнасилованы, в задний проход выливали жидкость в горячем виде.
And another thing is sometimes they use hot water as well to torture the people.
Были такие мужчины, которые, скажем, без ногтей. Бывали еще очень часто, что огнестрельными, ножевыми ранениями.
Burns with cigarettes, prolonged beatings, including beatings on the soles of the detainees' feet, stress position, threat of sexual humiliation, and in some cases, rape.
Even if these are members of maybe a banned Islamist group, it doesn't matter. You know, the ban on torture is absolute, and they should not be, and Kazakhstan certainly should not return them.
Before leaving the country, I decided to pay a visit to the office of the United Nations Refugee Agency, a body whose job it is to protect those who need protection most.
Does the UNHCR agree with the assessment that if these 29 Uzbeks currently being held get returned to Uzbekistan, they will be tortured and imprisoned there?
We, of course, first of all, we are not involved in extradition. As soon as someone is not considered a refugee, then this person is not a person of concern to UNHCR. There are some discussions that I would leave the human rights bodies in the government of Kazakhstan to comment on, but I do believe that there is a lot of discussion on that particular topic.
While Kazakhstan's government continues its discussions, the UNHCR seems to have abandoned the issue. After months of detention and a drawn-out court battle, the fate of the Uzbek asylum seekers and their families is still unclear. Dates have yet to be set for their expulsion, but Kazakhstan has shown it's ready to do so. Last year, it sent 4 ethnic Uzbeks back, one of whom has already been given a 10-year prison sentence. The other 3 have disappeared.
We wrote to the Uzbek authorities asking for an interview or a statement about the issues raised in this film. They didn't reply. That's it for this edition of People in Power. If you'd like to comment on this programme or have any other issues you'd like us to address, then do get in touch on aljazeera.net/English. Until next time, bye-bye.